And by the way, they pay to use a toilet. So ladies and gentlemen, if we agree from the beginning that we have a housing problem, we have an informal settlement problem, now we can get to the mechanics of how do you sort that out. And remember, what you have in our country, a country of 50 million people with less than 30,000 mortgages, it means we have a broken housing market. This is not, it is a failure because wewe fanya hiyo hesabu. Sisi wote tulienda shule. If you get, I don't even know whether you can convert it into a percentage. If you get 30,000 out of 50 million, I don't know what is that as a percentage. It is 0.00 mingi. That is the pass rate. So the question is, how do you get yourself out of such a situation? Now, let me give you a small history of how we got here. And we need to look at Kenya pre-colonial days. Pre-colonial days, for 33 years, this country, we only built 14,000 houses for 33 years because the policy of our colonialists was what was called exclusion and segregation. Then after independence, very soon after independence, we came up with our housing policy. In 1967, we established an institution called National Housing Corporation. You all know about NHC. NHC was funded by government to build houses. Madarakas, that's how they came up. Nyayos, that's how they came up. And many others that you know of. But then something happened between the 70s and the 80s. Because history is important. And good people, because this is our country. And that's why I said, I'm happy that when we're here, we've all agreed we have a problem. And this is our country. And we must always ask ourselves, what are we going to bequeath the next generation? It is our conversation. It is a fair question. So, 70s to 80s, something interesting happened. What happened in the 70s and 80s is something which is called structural adjustment that happened in the late 80s. You all know about structural adjustment that was imposed at that time by the World Bank, the IMF, and even the UN. What is structural adjustment? Structural adjustment was this Bretton Woods institution looked at these countries and they said, government is getting too much involved. Your expenditure is too high on certain things. So they said, cut this thing, cut this thing. You have too many people you've employed, cut salaries, and so on and so forth. So what happened is that government exited from providing money into housing since the 80s. Today, I am the PS in charge of National Housing Corporation. As we speak, after this, I am going to finalize my budget. In my budget, because state corporations are funded through state departments, National Housing Corporation will get zero out of the budget I'm going to get. Zero. So National Housing Corporation, that was providing a lot of housing and good housing and low-cost housing, today has got to go and behave like a private developer. They have to borrow money and then add the government bureaucracy, because they're still a government bureaucracy, and still expect them to go and compete with the private developers. Ladies and gentlemen, when we were told to exit from things like housing, what they used there was the word, let governments focus on providing an enabling environment. And that is what I heard my good friend, Professor Mwenya, talk last night. What is he saying? He's saying, what we want government to do is to upgrade the infrastructure in these informal settlements. I agree with him. I have upgraded so many informal settlements, but here is two challenges. The first challenge is, I gave you the two slums, Kibera and Mukuru. For Kibera, I can go and upgrade because the land belongs to government. For Mukuru, if I have to go and upgrade private land that has been invaded by people, I'll be legitimizing that issue. So even if we have the intention to, we have limitation. As a matter of fact, the biggest amount of money that we get as a country to address the issues of slum upgrading comes from the World Bank. And the World Bank have made it very clear that one of the conditions you cannot do is take that money into private land. So let me tell you what that translates to. Because I want to set the scenario, then we have a conversation. Kiambu is one of the biggest counties in this country. You know that. Kiambu, when you do our revenue allocation, receives quite a huge amount of money. But unfortunately, I have 20 billion now that I need to send to these counties that have got slums so that they can do what Professor Mwenya was telling us yesterday to do, upgrade. Out of the 20 billion, Kiambu, I cannot give them more than 500 million. Why? It's not because Kiambu doesn't have slums. Kitale is receiving close to 1 billion shillings. Kiambu is receiving less than 500. Why? Because the slums in Kiambu are on private land. So sometimes it's important, and that's why I really appreciate this conversation, because these people you invite on TV, sometimes they want to portray us as clueless. They want to portray us as we are the enemies of the people. They want to portray us as though we don't know what we're doing. But those are the realities. So, good people, I want you now to open the piece of paper that I have given you. And let me tell you what it is that I've given you. I have given you some numbers on Park Road, which is our first flagship project. And because today I want us to be as scientific as possible, because numbers don't lie. This project, Paul Park Road, some of you have conducted interviews there with me. You came here when we were constructing. But let me deconstruct Park Road for you. The cost of construction in Park Road, that development cost the GOK 5 billion shillings. The cost of land in Park Road, because I must do evaluation, was 250 million an acre. Park Road is 7 acres. When you convert that, that is 1.750 billion shillings. The cost of infrastructure is 840 million. The cost of compliance will have been 125 million. Other development cost, finance, and so on and so forth, is another billion. And if we allowed the private sector to build it, they must put a profit because they are not charitable organization. They will add, and this is very conservative. Some of them, they put 30% return. I have used 15, and I'm sure you can't find many 15. That is 750. So, if Park Road was to be delivered by a private developer, it will have cost 9.54 billion shillings. Okay? All right? Eh? At the minimum, by the way, because there's some numbers that are very conservative. However, the only cost that was passed on to the buyers there is 5 billion, meaning that 4.5 billion of an otherwise cost you will have paid, or those people who are living there, government underwrote. We took it out because the cost of land, we zero-rated it. The infrastructure we provided without charging it. The cost, including Governor Sonko gave us waivers for development costs there. He gave us the waivers. NEMA and National Construction Authority did not charge any fee. The people who are in Park Road, for you to enter into that place, you ought to have paid stamp duties. We wiped out 4% of the stamp duties. So, the reason why I'm giving you these numbers is because we need to ask ourselves the question, is it a bad thing for government to intervene and change a market that is broken? A market that is serving only few people. And now, I'm going to pose the question to you. Is it a bad thing for you to take away? Let's say, I don't know, we're less than 100 in this room here. So let's assume we came together and we said, let's go and buy Park Road. The way we do, chama. We all changa money. How many years will it take us to pay for the land alone? We'll changa pesa, pole pole, before we build that, we get money enough to buy the land alone. The alternative is a private sector person does it, which is what they're doing. They go and build. Now, a 3 million unit that I am providing to the ordinary Kenyan in Park Road, it is going for 7.650 million. 7.650 million. 3 million versus 7.650. So, even if those people say we are clueless, and even if those people say all manner of things, would you want to pay 7.65 million when there is 3 million available? Would you? I said, let's have a conversation. Would you? I mean, please. The alternative to Park Road, because most of you, I know you have Boroti here and there, is you can only go by Kisaju or out there. You have 12 kilometers, you go by where you need another 12 kilometers of road. That's why SACCOs are writing to me and say, we have so much land, but we have no infrastructure. Now, what did we provide in Park Road? Park Road, because, and I like as many of you to go there and check, there is an ECD there. Right inside, there is an ECD. Park Road has a retail center, almost a mini mall, a mini mart. There. Ukitaka kunyolewa, kuna kinyozi hapo chini. Ukitaka take away food, kuna variety. Ukitaka Chinese, ukitaka Japanese, ukitaka Gideri. Kila kitu iko hapo hivi. Ukitaka laundry, iko hapo. It has a parking silo. There is CCTV cameras in there. These guys have a basketball court. And they have a running track. They have a security wall. It's a gated community. Now, these are things you don't associate with ordinary Kenyans. These are things that you associate with leafy suburbs. So, government intervention took away almost half the cost of the project for ordinary Kenyans to own those homes. Why is that a bad thing? Now, because I want to finish this one, then tuende kuulizana maswali. If you take the 7.6 million, because, and now I'm introducing the housing fund, because that's the elephant in the room. If we left the private sector to deliver this house at 7.650, you got a number hapo hivi, then you go to a bank, when the HF ama KCB ama hizo zingine, you are lucky to get more than 10 years financing. The interest rate today for people they consider to have a good credit record is 15%. But remember, banks price risk. So if it's a normal hustler who's going there saying that I want a house, what rate do you think they're going to get? If at all, the bank might even throw away those on some way. Tafadhali, you don't, those hizo corridors zetu. But let's take the average, 15%. Very conservative. 7.65, if you pay a 10% deposit and you pay interest at 15% for 10 years, is 111,000 every month. Now, let me just make a guess. And I don't know how much journalists earn. But let me take a guess. That amount there, most of us in this room cannot afford. And probably they don't earn that kind of money, what it will cost you. But look at the alternative. I have taken out all the costs. It is 3 million. But I still want you to pay 10% deposit. Now, we financed Kenyans who own homes there at 7% versus 15%. We gave them 25 years versus 10 to pay for those houses through a tenant purchase scheme in National Housing Corporation. The result is they are paying me 19,000. So good people. 19,000 versus 111. Now, most of you here, I'm sure where you're paying rent, you're paying more than 19,000 or thereabout. So, How is 19,000 a bad thing? And why should we leave the market to dictate the terms so that you pay 111%? And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the solution. What is the solution? Our solution, and as I said, it's not a perfect solution, but it is a good plan. What is our solution? Our solution, first of all, starts on the basis of shared prosperity. Number two, our solution is based on Section 31 of the Employment Act, which says that every employer has a responsibility to provide housing to their people, by the way, and it says close to where they work. Let me tell you something. Park Road, where it is, majority of you will walk to work. You don't even need to get a car. It's close by. And even if it's KTN ambao mko Mombasa Road, unaingia expressway kidogo, unaingia hapo, uko job from Park Road. And zingine ambazo tunajenga. So, today, even if your employer is giving you a house allowance, tell me, if we leave it to the market, how much is it going to cost you? 111,000. It means majority of you will not qualify. You'll never get a house. Your alternative is a SACCO model, which has done a lot for many Kenyans. But I know a thing or two about SACCO model and housing. Because me, I was born in an informal settlement in Nakuru, Bondeni. That's where I was born. Usiangalie tumbo yangu mnadhani mimi nilizaliwa huko nini. So, my father was a civil servant, was earning 6,500 shillings. He joined a SACCO called Ngwatanero. Huko Bahati, mnajua. We went and bought land, just like everybody else. We got a quarter of an acre. And we started the home ownership journey. 9 years later, by the time my dad was resting, was passing away, we had never finished building that house. That is the story of many Kenyans. Eventually, you will own it, but after 9 years. So I want to ask you another question. What is so wrong with me assisting you to own a home in the next 2 years versus 9 years? Is that a bad thing? If it's not a bad thing, then why don't we come and say, yo plan yako ni mzuri, lakini hapa hivi twende hivi. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what our solution is. In very simple terms, our solution is not a solution that is just crazy we thought about. We went to benchmark. We went to Singapore. We went to Mexico. We went to Brazil. We went to Nigeria. We went to China. Many different places. And some of them we went to benchmark so that we know how not to do it. Because some of them, they have failed. What did they do? They said, let's save together. And that is a principle that most of us understand here because you belong to a chama somewhere or a SACCO somewhere. So let's save together. And they did. And they told the employer, you save this, the employee will save that. Number two, they said, once we pull this money together, and it is driven by law, because I know most of you are saying, where is we fanya hiki tukue voluntary? You see, when it is driven by law, if I'm going to get $1 billion a month, it means I can confidently go out there and call investors and tell them, for as long as that law is there, 3 years from now, I'll still be collecting the $1 billion. So let me tell you in simple terms. You know today something called fuel levy. We all pay fuel levy today if you're driving. Fuel levy is the one that has enabled us to build all these roads you're seeing here. Why? Because we've gone to the market and we told the market, here is the history. There is this levy here. We are collecting so much, and you look after the last 10 years, there has been an increase. So give us a lot of money today. We build those roads, but in the next 15 years, we will still be paying that fuel levy and we'll be able to pay you out. If we didn't have that, guess what is going to happen? What was going to happen was they will tell us, no, you can't afford it. Our housing fund works in the same way. It is a mandatory contribution by employer and employee, and as Hussein has said, we have capped it at 2,500. So highest earning Kenyan will only pay 2,500 shillings. Majority of Kenyans will pay 1,000 and below. That's number one. But then we pull our money together. And I have not even brought in the people who are going to pay voluntarily. Then what happens? We pay into this fund. Then, as a country, we are able to go out there to the market, and we call investors. And we tell them, the Kenyan government is providing land at no cost, like I have done in Park Road, for Kenyans to own homes. The Kenyan government is committed to bring infrastructure to that site. The Kenyan government is prepared to take away all these costs of approval. All I want you to do is bring your money, build those houses en masse. That's important. Build those houses en masse, and then when you finish building those houses, give me the keys, I pay you, you go. If I don't have the housing fund, they will ask me, how will you fund me when I finished in 3 years' time? Alafu tutaanza Kiingereza mingi, waseme hapana, hii siwezi jenga. That's why you need certainty of cash flows every month coming in into this fund so that we can get as many investors, which is foreign money that is coming in here, and also the domestic money that we have, so that we build those houses. So forget about what they're talking about, it's a tax. And let me address that part. Good people, you all pay taxes today because you're employed, so you're paying payroll tax. I pay payroll tax. I don't know how many of you have been to Moyale here, but do you know we have a road that goes all the way to Moyale? That road was built using your taxes, but you have no direct benefit from that money because you may never ever go to Moyale. That is what tax is. But what is a saving? What is this housing fund contribution? Housing fund conveys to you or confers you a direct right. It's a direct right to you. Why? Because you will either get an affordable unit, which is highly subsidized, or after 7 years, if you don't want it, we give you back your money plus your return. And now, as I wind up, you are all employed here. So, if I left, let's assume all of us here average, we're going to pay 1,000 shillings. If you're paying 1,000 shillings, and you took that 1,000 shillings and you put it in a fixed deposit in a bank today, how much return do you think you're going to get? 70 shillings after 1 year. 67%. That's how much you're going to get. But by taking that 1,000 shillings and putting it in the housing fund, what are you getting? Because a lot of people are also talking about return. What are you getting? As an employee, first of all, you get 100% return on day one. You ask me, hinga na smoke kitu. You know, nyinyi hamuelewi hii maneno. The minute you put your money in the housing fund, the employer contributes for you another 1,000. So on day one, your 1,000 inaza to another 1,000. Na ni pesa yako. How can that be a bad thing? Sasa, unless ni Shylock, huko nje, where can you get 100% return? So for employees, to be quite honest, this is what I call a sweetheart deal. It is a good deal. It is a very good deal. Now, when you get the house, I am also helping you, as I said, you don't pay stamp duties if you're a first-time homeowner. And as you pay up to 300,000 a year interest, I give you back as mortgage relief. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have set the scene. We know where we are right now. We know where we want to go. And by the way, let me just say one more thing, or two more things quickly. One, the rules of this chama of ours, this national circle, are one ID, one house. One ID, one house. You cannot buy more than one unit. So ile ati watanenda nunue nyumba 100 you cannot. It is one ID, one house. Number two, for even the people who are making a lot of noise, because they are there and some of them have genuine issues, they say, why are you talking to me about a house? I already own one, or I'm already paying for one. Now, I'm assuming those are parents. And those parents, perhaps are still living with their kids. Grown-up kids, 27, 28 years, are still living with their parents. Why? Because what is the alternative rental market out there? How much can that young man, young lady who is just starting life, how much rent can they pay? If there is no affordable rental, they end up in pipeline where we call them tenements, ama Zimmerman. So they opt to stay with their children at home. To them, I am telling them, that money that you're contributing, you can confer it to your child. Even the child who is like my daughter, my firstborn daughter turned 15 last week. I can confer that benefit to her so that by the time she gets to 18, she can have a unit. Can you imagine, good people, that your parents, the first thing as you got into the job market, they gave you a unit? That is how we are able to do it on this particular program. Hussein, have I done justice?
Actually, kuna swali kweli?
I think hawana. Nisaidie na kalamu.
Okay. Okay, I'll start with the
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Mburu. I have several questions. And yes, I'll try and limit them. Yeah. But I know you said you have a lot of time, so.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, first it's regarding with data, the data that you are providing us with. Hussein